Hello again and welcome to another free art lesson. I thought for today's lesson I'd show you how to do a meadow with grass and get the perspective right on it. Even though it's a meadow, we have grass that's going to be far away, and as it gets closer you see more detail in it. So we have two things happening there. We have aerial perspective, which says the grass in the distance will look a little bit lighter value. As it gets closer, it gets a little darker. Also, there's linear perspective involved, which says that as it gets closer, you're going to see more detail and definition in it. So this canvas is wet. I do have a thin white base coat on there that I mixed up with the titanium white and some Grumbacher Alkyd medium. So it is wet. Got a little bit of a mock-up of a background in there just to kind of put it in relation on a canvas so you can kind of make some sense of it. I've got a 2-inch Creative Mark primer brush here. And if you come down to the palette, you'll see that I'm going to take some titanium white, a little bit of cadmium yellow pale. These are Charvin paints, by the way, great paint to work with. A little bit of cadmium yellow pale. I've got a little bit of deep cinnabar green here. And I'm going to put just a touch of that. I'm looking for something a little bit lighter and yellowy, more like sunlit grass. In the distance, against the tree line, I can just kind of tap this in. Now obviously, I'm just doing this for demo purposes. You'd have to put this in conforming to the lay of your particular land that you're portraying. Maybe you have a hill there, a gully, whatever. Put it in according to the lay of the land that you're creating. And I'm going to bring this down a certain ways. As it gets closer, I want to get a little bit darker with that. So into this same puddle on my palette, I'm going to mix a little more of that deep cinnabar green. Get a little richer with the color. The trick is I'm not going to start right there where I left off. I'm going to start below that. Because starting below it, I'm knocking some of the dark green off the brush, and then it's easier to melt it up into the yellow green, the previous green, because I want this to be a gradual transition from one color to the other. And I just don't want two stripes of a lighter yellow green and then dark green below it. So the trick is to knock some of the paint off down here, and then I use a lighter touch, and see how I'm kind of just dabbing with this brush. This brush is very rough, which is excellent for making grass textures. And I just kind of weave those together so it's a gradual transition. Now as I come lower, I'll go even darker. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'll start a little bit below and I'll weave that next color up into that. I'll take a little bit more of the cinnabar deep and a little touch of the ultramarine blue. Maybe even a speck of the Van Dyke brown just to kind of make sure it's a little darker, a little deeper color. Beautiful, I like that. Now I'm going to start down here and same thing. I'm going to weave this up. Notice it's a gradual transition from dark to light in the distance. And you'll see here in a moment, I'm going to actually start adding more texture to this foreground. I'm not going to bring this all the way down. There's no need to for what I'm doing here today, but this will give you the idea of the technique. And I just kind of weave this into the previous green so that they actually mingle together. See how it looks like it's starting to look like it's laying flatter and it's more of a vast distance across there. Now if I switch over to a liner brush, I've got a number 2 best script liner brush here. Script liner is a longer haired brush than just a normal liner. So you need to get something that's a script liner, not just a liner. This will hold a lot of paint. This is great for fine line work. And you'll see here on the palette, I'm going to take yellow and white into some of this color just to lighten the value ever so slightly. Enough to be noticeable though. And I'm loading this up with a lot of paint thinner. What I've got here is Turpenoid that I'm cleaning my brushes with, and I'm actually just dipping into that. You could use a paint medium as well, just something to thin it down well enough to flow off the brush. See how I pull that brush through the palette and I really load it up right full of paint. Those bristles are loaded right from one end to the other. Now here in the foreground, I start adding more definition. Now that's not going to be light enough to show. So I've got to make an adjustment on that. That's not a mistake, it's an adjustment. You never know. It's hard mixing this color on this gray palette as to what it's going to look like against the dark up there. So it's not anything that you do wrong. You just make an adjustment and go with it. Now see up here, I just keep adding a little bit of the lighter blades of grass, which gives it more definition, more detail. And then the viewer automatically just kind of thinks that it's grass that's going further back. So I just kind of pull this out, even up a little into here, just so it kind of gives you that feeling that it's a gradual recession back into the background. So it gives you the feeling that it's all the same type of grass, but you're just seeing it perspectively as being smaller in the distance. And notice how often I reload. I keep scooping up more paint on this brush. You'll have to get your paint thin enough to actually flow over the top of this previous wet paint that you've put down. The key is that thin paint will stick to thicker paint, so you have to get this paint that you're applying with the liner brush really, really thin. And that's about all there is to it. You can vary the colors. Obviously, if I take a little more white, something a little more yellowish, will always give it a little more interest if we have more colors in that. So don't be afraid to shake things up once in a while and add some different colors. Brighten it a little bit here and there. See how much more snap that gives that? So you can play around with the colors. It's the technique that I want you to absorb here today. So that's how you render a meadow of grass and make it look like it's receding into space. And like I said, you want to tie this together by putting a few out here so it's a gradual change from texture to less and less all the while. So give that a shot. I'm pretty sure you can do that. I know you can do that. So don't be afraid to, it looks like a lot of work. The main part of the work is just all the little grasses up here in the foreground. Take care till next time. I'll see you again. Check out wilsonbickford.com for more tips and techniques.